And here we are. Welcome back to the Richard Sophomore, where we never shut out. We're your host, MD and CD. What is going on? It is in the middle of bowl season. Currently underway is the Marshall UTSA game. Frank Harris, last minute, declared out from injury. Guy had a month to heal. Kind of ruining my bowl pool. Probably yours as well, if I had to assume that. What are you gonna do? What are you gonna do? But today we're gonna be talking about some more transfer portal, some more coaching carousel, and that's gonna be it. We're gonna have our previews for the next segment of bowl games. If you want to go back and watch our previews for our other bowl games, even though those games are over, you can check those out. But those other bowl games will be posted either Wednesday night or Thursday morning. Either one, either way, you're gonna get them. You're gonna know where we're leaning and what is all going on there. CD, what's going on?
It's a whirlwind here. Not only am I a student trying to buckle down last couple finals here today and on Thursday, but it's bowl season. National Signing Day is tomorrow. Transfer portal window kind of just closed, but also still open. And like it is wild coaching carousel. We haven't even gotten to. I didn't even able to think about like the playoffs and like those actual two awesome matchups that are going to happen. And we'll obviously break those down eventually. But like I'm overwhelmed, but I'm also excited because like there's so much college football, so much drama, all the reasons we love it. It's coming to fruition. Obviously, it's a lot of talks being made about the calendar and like the crazy stuff all happening at once, and just the burnout's gonna happen. And I don't doubt that at all. But at the same time, like as us fans right now, let's just enjoy it while we have it these next couple of years, and then like obviously be grateful for your coaching staffs that are working 19, 20-hour days right now, especially our new coaches, Manny Diaz, John Summerall, Derek Mason, which we'll talk about today. Those guys, I do not envy them right now, trying to turn over a roster, trying to save a roster, and then also trying to recruit new people, new staff. It is crazy how much they have to do, but we're happy to talk about it. And obviously, we love it. It's college football.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So first up, again, we talked about the agenda, three coaching. If you follow our episodes, you know that we're gonna talk about three coaches, and then we're gonna talk about, about 10 guys in the transfer portal. And of course, we're not gonna get to everyone in the transfer portal. But if you have guys that you want us to talk about, right, or maybe some special coordinator hires that you want us to talk about, let us know in the comments. And we'd be happy to talk about those at some point. We're still working our way through all the coaching carousel. There's just a recent hire the other day. Troy hires Jared Parker from Notre Dame. So that's a big name, big news right there. So things are constantly moving. Things are constantly moving, but we're doing our best. We're gonna keep working our way through these transfer portals, and I'm excited. So ready to get into it, CD?
Yep.
Here we go. First up, let's talk about John Summerall. What an excellent job he did at Troy. What an excellent job. Tulane says, I want some of that in my program, right? And Tulane had recent success with Willie Fritz, right? They'd won the American the year before. They won the freaking Cotton Bowl, beat USC, Caleb Williams, in a remarkable game that was. And yeah, so the formula is there. Like you can win at Tulane. You can win at Tulane. We know that. It's in a great geographical area. You just need a good coach. And I think John Sumrall is quite a good coach. What do you have to say about that?
Yeah, I think this you're going like you mentioned it's from one really good hire, Willie Fritz, who took a couple of years, but he turned around the program. We have our Willie Fritz video when he goes to Houston up on our YouTube video as well. If you want to check that out as well. We talk about his, same thing here about with Houston and Willie Fritz. But yeah, I love this for John Summerall and for Tulane. I think this is about as good of a hire as you could have at Tulane. And I love it because the way to build a program like Tulane, especially in the college football playoff era that we are coming into, right, 12 years, is to stack consecutive good hires at a time. The reality of Tulane right now is like if a coach does his job, if he does what you want him to do and hire him, like he's gonna get hired away more than likely, right? That's just what it is. That's the reality of a lot of jobs, 90% of jobs in college football. But I understand it as a Minnesota fan. Like I get that. If PJ Fleck continues to ball out or maybe continues to replicate that 2019 season where he gets 10, 11 wins, like he's going to end up somewhere else. But that's a good thing for Tulane. This is a good problem to have. And I trust the staff and this athletic department to nail Willie Fritz, and then also I think they nailed this John Summerall hire as well.
Yeah, I mean, John Summerall, 23-4 at Tulane or at Troy. Two Sun Belt championships in the 2 years that he was there. Like what? Uh,
And what were they
he
before? It wasn't that like Troy was a powerhouse in the Sun Belt. Yes, under Neil Brown, they were doing great things, obviously. But Chip Lindsey was in there and they were winning 5 games a year, right? This was not like the Boise State or Liberty in the COC where they just have significantly more resources and talent than a lot of other programs in the conference.
Yeah, dude, and I love this hire too because I also love what John Summerall says. If you've been watching, if you're a Tulane fan, you've probably been watching some of these press conferences. Even if you're a Troy fan, you probably watched John Summerall's like exit press conference, and all he talks about is says it's always been about the players. That's where we start. That's what we build. That's what it's about. And if I'm a college football coach, that's exactly what I would want my motto to be, right? It's about the players. It's absolutely about the players. How can you develop them? Like John Summerall, like he can take credit, sure, and he will take good credit for the work that he did at Troy, but there were a lot of players in there too that really like elevated him. And there's certain coaches, uh, aka certain coaches that coach at Texas A&M that really should be giving a lot of their careers credit to particular players. But I like that John Summerall gives credit to the players, and I love that he's all about the players. So I think people are going to be really, really excited about that. And look, it's a great place to like. You're in the state of Louisiana, like you can actually recruit pretty decently, and you got a good pitch too. SMU is out of there; they're in the AACC now instead of the AAC. Like it's going to be Tulane and in Memphis, really. Like if you look at it in terms of like the level of talent and resources, who's going to be competing at the top there. So I think Tulane's a very, very good spot to land a
He
job. And
was
I think
also
John
there
Summerall, yeah, he was there before too as a DC.
10 years ago, DC. So he knows like there's to me, I think that's a good sign. When I see that and like guy comes back, he's like, okay, he knows the situation there, resources, people. Not only do the people feel comfortable hiring him back, but he also feels comfortable in going back there, knowing that with his resources and his abilities, he can win there. And John Sherman was a guy that did not have was not short of options, right? This guy has been a pretty hot topic the past couple coaching cycles, right? Because of the success he had at Troy for 2 straight years. And to me, I love that. Not only does he understand what the program is about, he understands the fan, the town, uptown in New Orleans area. It's awesome. I think this is a great fit.
I think so too. What they say was I believe it's a 6 year, a 6 year deal. And look, he might not be there all those 6 years. The reality is too, like Mark Stoops had taken that job at Texas A&M, like was originally rumored. John Summerall would be at Kentucky. That's his alma
Yeah,
mater. Like, and I guarantee you, Kentucky, that'd be the first person that they call, and he would be more than happy to take that job. So I do think the next job that John Summerall takes is in the SEC. So I don't think this by any means his last stop, but that's a good thing for Tulane, right? Like if you're like it, like you said, it's going to be hard to stack good hire after good hire after good hire, but you can kind of do that, at Tulane when you have the resources, and it is a pretty, what do you say, like it's an attractive job, right? It's an attractive job.
I think almost
So
now more than ever because not only the success Willie Fritz had, but we'll get it when we get into like to me my long term expectations and for Summerall and Tulane here. But like with the rules and the playoff expanding to 12 and that 12th spot or whatever you want to call it is going to be open for an at-large bid in the group of five, like Tulane and with all the movement with UCF, Cincinnati, SMU, Houston, BYU all gone to the Power Five and unable to qualify for that spot. Like Tulane is on a short list of teams that I feel really good about their chances every year going into it, right? To make that playoffs, which is money, which is publicity, which is all these good things that come with national exposure.
absolutely, not to mention when look in a couple years when media contracts expire, Tulane is on the short list of schools that can make that jump to, I guess, P4 or P3 or whatever it ends up being. I don't know. The next conference realignment is going to be crazy, but yeah, but in the moment right now, John Summerall is a fantastic hire. So we talk about expectations, then we talk about grades, right? Because we can't give our grades without giving our expectations, right? My expectations for Tulane is to be year over year in contention for the American Conference Championship. And also, every few years, they have one of those years where they should be in the conversation for a playoff spot, given the conference that they're in and given the way that they can compete at that conference. That's my expectation. I'm not saying that they should make the playoffs, like with John Summerall, like, and it would be a total failure. I'm saying like the expectation should be like they got some talent there. John Summerall's a great coach. You have the infrastructure to win. You play in a conference that favors pretty schedule or schedules pretty favorably to you. And yeah, so give me like it should be 9-10 wins a year at least for Tulane, I think. Maybe not year one, right? Because they did lose a lot of talent this year and talent last year to the NFL. But I don't think that's unreasonable.
Yeah, I could not agree more, especially within the conference. I don't think they're quite ready to compete at a national level, right? Like every couple of years you mentioned, we're like, okay, they can be a legit top 20, top 15 team, right? And compete for a power five or for that playoff spot. But in conference, with SMU leaving, with Cincinnati, UCF, all those guys leaving, it opens the door wide open for you. It's UTSA and Memphis, and not really much else there, resource wise and talent wise. We'll see what UCF does there with Alex Golish, but like it's open for you. And I think Summerall is a perfect guy to combat that. In terms of short term expectations for you, I do think it's tough because Willie Fritz did build such a good roster. And with the transfer portal, it's just so easy to decimate it and so hard to re-recruit guys. I think that's what you have to do. While guys like Michael Pratt and Chris Brazel and some of the running back maybe might all be gone, there's some other talented pieces on this roster on the front and on both sides of the line of scrimmage that you need to buckle down that I think he starts with. And Summerall's like a guy that I think is pretty well respected. I think he will be able to do that in the short term and also like capitalize on some other transfers that he can bring in as well. And also, yeah, continue that momentum that Willie Fritz had, right? I know you won't have Tajay Spears or Michael Pratt or some of the stars that Willie Fritz and Tulane had, but you can still continue that momentum, you know?
Absolutely. So given the expectations, I will give my grade. And my grade for this hire is an A. How is it not an A? You hire a guy that's formerly in the program. The guy's had success where he's been. He's young, he's 41. Now you could give it a lower grade if you were really nitpicky, like, and we're like, well, this is just a stepping stone job for him. He's gonna go somewhere else in a couple years. But that's what makes it a good hire. Like if he's gonna go somewhere else because he's better and he's good enough to why can you not, you know what I'm saying? That's crazy to me. That's crazy talk to me. This is an A hire. You know, if I could give an A plus, this would be an A plus. This is a fantastic hire. I thought John Summerall was gonna be in conversations for larger jobs. Like, of course we talked about Kentucky. I thought he was in the I don't know. I don't know. I don't know where he
I,
wanted to
I,
go. I think he would have wanted to stay in the SEC, and there were not a lot of jobs in the SEC this
I think
offseason. If
Arkansas, if there wasn't any, I
there's
don't think
none.
If Arkansas stayed open or
Well,
like
besides
came
Texas A&M.
open,
Texas A&M was open, but
yeah, and he got some looks there, and there were some early mentions there. I do think there's something to say about maybe the Tulane job is just a little bit better than we think it is because Willie Fritz, like, stayed there over Georgia Tech, right? Ran it back another year. And Summerall chose it after having multiple options last year, presumably options this year, knowing that he's probably going to get some looks there in the SEC. Yeah, I'm going to give it an A's too. Like, there's no doubt about it. You mentioned he checked every single box. And if your only complaint or worry as a Tulane fan is, oh, he might leave us, great. That means he has a fantastic year and success that Willie Fritz had, and you do it all over again. And by that chance, you're going to continue to build good consecutive coaches, and your program's just going to be better than where he founded it at. And that's just such a beautiful thing about college football. Even though like it sucks, it takes it takes, but it also gives you what Summerall's going to do for this program. I think it's going to be awesome. Yeah, easy A for me. I thought this is one of the perfect fits. I think, and obviously we'll see what happens. We'll figure out what his staff looks like, but I trust him to build a good one. I think this is a slam dunk. I think this is awesome, and Tulane fans should be really excited about this.
well, let's talk about Manny Diaz then. A little different situation. This is a Power Five school. Their coach, who had been doing a fantastic job, Mike Elko, gets swiped by Texas A&M, and Duke is asked to go get a guy. Go get a guy. How do we build on that success, right? You kind of get like how do we keep this roster together? You lose some guys, literally from eligibility, right? You lose Miles Jones, you lose your linebacker. Riley Leonard goes to the transfer portal. Jordan Waters goes to the transfer portal. Jacques Moore goes to the transfer portal. Well, Jacques Moore came back. It it's a lot. It was a lot. So what does Duke do? They go out and get Manny Diaz, who is currently the defensive coordinator at Penn State, formerly the head coach at Miami. He's been in the ACC multiple times, right? He's at Florida State as a GA. That's actually his alma mater. He worked at NC State for a bit. And of course, we talked about Miami being the head coach there. So he's very, very well adjusted to the ACC and that its environment. He knows what's going on there. Uh, the recruiting landscape, I think he understands geographically that area very well. I'm not saying he's the best recruiter. I would classify him as a subpar recruiter, but he's a very, very good coordinator. He's a very, very good coordinator. So will this work out? I have no idea. Let me hear your thoughts.
I think I'm kind of with you. I'm a little bit cautiously optimistic. I think I like the idea of it, right? You follow in a guy like Mike Elko, right, where he was just super buttoned up, right? You like he was gonna be you were gonna probably outcoach every team that you played in game. And I love that for Duke to give you that competitive advantage because you're not gonna have it on the talent gap. You have to make up that gap somehow by, outcoaching a team. And that was Mike Elko, and he maximized that roster. And you're seeing those guys go in the transfer portal to some big names or go to the NFL draft. Like he did a really good job, and just such a quick turnaround there for Duke after David Cutcliffe. But I don't know. I liked what he did at Miami for that 1 year, 2020, but also that was 2020 year, and we've seen like sometimes that year you kind of just throw it out. Like you never really know how good someone or a team was that year. You saw them regress back to the mean in 2021, and then obviously got the fired, and then went out and got Mario Cristobal. I do think some people just aren't fully ready to be a Power Five head football coach, and that might have been Manny Diaz's case in this scenario, right? They let go of Mark Richt, and he was an in-house guy. Ended up hiring him back after I believe he took another job, and then his Miami job came open, and he came back and took it. Um, but I don't know. I think he'll be better here at Duke than at Miami, just because the expectations are a little bit lower, right? And the pressures maybe and whatnot. But it's interesting. I think Duke fans need to be a little bit cautious because Mike Elko was a home run hire, and I think he's gonna crush it at A&M. Like he was so good for you at Duke there. Manny Diaz, I like the idea of it. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, I think what saves him here is the expectations because and the fact that he's not gonna be expected to recruit at a top 10 level, top 15 level. Like
Yep.
he was never gonna be able to do that. He lost out on some major recruits in the Miami area and in the state of Florida that like we just can't miss. Like and that was a huge, 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 huge problem for him. But he gets a job at Penn State because he's a good coordinator. He's a really good coordinator.
Really good coordinator.
But I don't think Penn State's gonna be missing him that much. I think you're gonna get your local fan kind of like, oh shoot, like Manny Diaz, our defense has been so good. I mean, they just hired Tom Allen, who I mean, if you remember at Indiana, like in 1 year, turned that team into like what was it, like a bottom, like I'd say bottom 20 defense and like a top 20 defense, like just in that 1 year, and he ended up getting promoted there. But I don't know. So I think Penn State will be fine, and that's what kind of leads me to believe like this is an all right hire. I think this is a all right hire. I don't think your ceiling is crazy when you hire a guy like Manny Diaz, but that's fine. But that's totally fine. If you're gonna win some games, you in the ACC too. Like you don't have like there are a couple elite teams in the ACC, and there's some teams on the up and up, right? If you want to talk about Florida State being on the up and up, Miami recruiting at a high level, Clemson just always being good. But if there was a Power Five, I guess Power Four conference now that a team like Duke could come out of nowhere and win, it would be the ACC, I think, just because I don't think there's a crazy discrepancy in talent as there are in some other conferences. But on the other hand, it is Duke. It's hard to win there. It's hard to recruit because the academic standards are really high. It is a basketball school. Sorry, it is. I love Duke as a program. It's awesome, but there are just some realities there, right? And when, before, of course, we give our grades, right? We talk about the expectations of a program like Duke. Like before Mike Elko, like their win total was like at what, 3.5 when he took over? Like people thought he exceeded those expectations largely, right? They made it, they won 8 games, and then this year they won 7 games after losing Riley Leonard. So that's crazy to me. That's like far exceeding expectations. Like 8 wins, 7 wins. That to me is exceeding expectations at Duke. I think you're looking at 5-7, 6-6. Like if you make a bowl game, that's a good year, I think, for this Duke team. I don't know. Is that stupid? I know Duke has had success in the past with other coaches and certain seasons they've won a lot of games. I think that can happen. You have a couple seasons where you have really good seasons, but is it going to be like that consistently, or is it just going to be like every so often, like you get a recruiting class that's really nice, or a transfer portal quarterback that takes over, or you just have a really good coaching staff in there and you win a couple games maybe you shouldn't have in one particular season. So is that crazy? I don't know.
Yeah,
What are your
let me hit on a couple of
expectations?
topics there. Well, so like in terms of win total, I think it helps. Like you said, mentioned bowl game, it's kind of where it should be at. But I do think it helps with conference realignment. Like we talked about with some schools like Mississippi State, Arkansas, Minnesota, Indiana, teams like that, where you add in these power teams into your conference, you're gonna lose more games than you have been losing before. Your schedule gets harder. I think with Duke here though, you bring in Cal, you bring in Stanford and SMU, who I love SMU right now. I think they're trending really high up. But Cal and Stanford are not significantly more talented than Duke is. And I'd argue that with the way that Mike Elko left it, or at least the 2023 version of Mike Elko's team was more talented than Stanford and Cal. In my opinion,
By a
right?
lot. By a
Yeah,
lot.
and as long as you can not lose the coaching edge there, you should be able to win those games. So I do think it helps in this scenario. The new ACC, Duke maybe 5.5, 6.5 wins. You could hover around there. And then you mentioned get a transfer port quarterback. The interesting part about Duke here is right. Some teams like you just have to use the transfer portal differently than other teams. Like some teams just blindly choose not to use it. Dabo Sweeney and Clemson, but some teams like really, really rely on it. Deion Sanders, USC, et cetera, right? But Duke, with their academic standards, Vanderbilt, Cal, Stanford, some of those teams, a lot in the ACC as well, we mentioned, it's just hard to get. It's easier to get transfers in than high school players, but it's still hard to live up to the academic standards that you have to get into Duke first, and then you can play for their football team. Now, I do think it's interesting because their basketball program, it takes recruits super, super well. So I don't know exactly how that works. But I think with the transfer portal quarterbacks, and you've seen it with a couple other teams there, is let's go get a master's degree from Duke, right? Or a degree from Duke. Go play 1 or 2 years there. And even if you're a really good quarterback and you're getting better NILs here, let me go get a Duke degree and play for the football team. I think that's the way to run it. If you're Manny Diaz, if you're Duke, Notre Dame in a similar vein as well, but a little bit higher stakes and standards. There were some talks and some rumbling about the NIL improving for Duke football, right? I do think the president of Duke does understand that Duke has to be competent in football if they want to stay in the ACC. I get their basketball program is elite blue blood, but I think with the future of college sports right now and all the realignment, like everyone is focusing on their football team and maximizing that to make sure that they can stay in their conference and stay relevant. And I think Manny Diaz, and part of the reason he came over from Penn State and chose Duke and felt that he was ready to go to Duke and compete is because I think you were going to see a little bit uptick in support and NIL for Duke, and that would help them tremendously, right? Even if it's just a little bit, but just stay competitive with some other schools in that middle to bottom tier of the ACC.
Yeah, look, and if we have like young Duke fans on here that are listening to this and they're probably like talking smack to me in the comments, like, how could you say that Duke's expectations are so low? Blah, 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 blah. David Cutcliffe, I thought did a really good job. And if there's fans that disagree with me there, that's ridiculous. Of the 14 years he coached there, 6 bowl games, like that's a lot. Before that, Ted
And,
Roof, none. Carl Franks, none.
and it was a
You know,
span of 6 and 7 years, or if I'm counting that right, it was crazy how they went there with Duke, and all of a sudden, like they were playing the ACC championship game one year, like that's out of the norm for Duke football, right?
yeah.
Cutcliffe
From
did. really well in the middle of his term, and Mike Elko was obviously building to that eventually, I think.
Yeah, from 1999 to 2011, they did not make a bowl game over a decade. So
Yeah.
like I'm telling you that the expectation, like me saying like that Duke, the expectation's 5-7, 6-6. Historically speaking, that's actually probably more than like your older Duke fans are gonna have
Mm.
probably lower expectations. Maybe things change. Of course, Mike Elko does a great job. David Cutcliffe did some good things, right? Like expectations have changed a little bit. And of course, like you said, the landscape of the ACC looks different. But I think Manny Diaz can meet those expectations. I think he can. If he doesn't take the transfer portal very seriously, I don't think he can do that. I don't think he can do that. So we
Real
gave our
quick, let me.
expectations. Oh, yep, sure.
I do want to talk about before we give our grade. I do want to talk about the staff changes just a little bit. It's not fully complete. He's going to finalize that, I think, after signing day. So obviously it'll be before this or after this video is out. But it sounds like you got some turnover from obviously Mike Elko and some other supporting staff going to A&M, right? Your O-line coach, Adam Cushing, Ishmael Aristotide, cornerbacks coach, and then
Director
Trooper
of player
Taylor.
personnel.
Yep, Trooper Taylor, the running backs coach as well. So, and there's a lot going on. Kevin Johns was a guy that a lot of people really, really liked at Duke. I don't think he's going to be retained. It sounds like it's Jonathan Brewer coming over from SMU to be their offense coordinator. Well, obviously, SMU is a really good program offensively, Rhett Lashley and all that stuff. And there's some ties there from Rhett Lashley at Miami to Miami Diaz, I believe. And obviously, SMU coming to the ACC. And then obviously, another guy, Jeff Norrid from Louisiana, coming over to be the O line coach to replace Adam Cushing, who had a ton of success there in a few short years at Duke. The Kevin Johns ones, I think, hurts. I think he was a guy. I don't know if he's going to love the demotion to QB coach or whatever it would be, but yeah, he's a guy that's very well respected. I'm not saying Jonathan Brewer is a bad hire at all. I'm saying Kevin Johns is a guy that for what he's gonna be, he should be a hot topic somewhere else. And like, is he going to A&M? I don't know what his deal will, what that deal was, but to me, that one I do want to mention that because that's
Yeah.
tough.
And people might look at like, they're like, wait, Kevin John, like, and they look at Duke's offensive stats this year and they're like, Duke was not very great offensively this year. I'm like, dude,
Watch the
the
games.
injury, watch the games, the injury bug, like there were like a couple plays there, like he willfully drew up some stuff for Grayson Loftus. Like the end of that Wake Forest game, like like went in the locker room at halftime and said, "This is not working. How do I put my third string quarterback in his first ever start in a good situation to come back in this football game and win it?" That's what he does. That's what he does. I think Kevin Johns would be a good hire for just about any program out there. So I don't know if that's a hot thing to say, but I do agree that he's a very, very good coach. Any other thoughts on their staff before we get into
Yeah,
grades?
I do think the reason I bring up Kevin Johns is because Manny Diaz being a defense coordinator, we talk about it with all these defense coordinator hires, right? You need to nail your offense coordinator position. You need to because Lincoln Riley, his offense coordinator doesn't really matter too much. Ryan Day, his offense coordinator doesn't matter too much. He's gonna call plays, yada yada yada. If you're a defensive oriented guy or a supervisor kind of guy where you need play callers on both sides of the ball, you need to nail those hires, right? Not just Manny Diaz defensively, take care of that side of the ball, fine, but he has to nail this offense coordinator hire, especially at a place where you're going to be a little bit limited talented wise.
Absolutely. With that being said, the grade I give this higher, I think it's going to shock a lot of you. I give it a B minus. I give it a B minus, which when I first thought about it, I'm like, oh man, yeah, that's a big name, right? But just I think not being able to recruit at a high level, not elevating your program's recruiting, I think hurts, right? If Duke stays recruiting, Mike Elko had top 40 classes, which is absurd for Duke. That's absurd, right? And I mean, not saying that those freshmen, right, were the reason why Duke was so successful. It was the other players. It was Mike Elko bringing out the best in his players that were already there, which I think Manny Diaz can do to some degree. But I don't know. I can see a lot of problems going on there. And if he does not utilize the transfer portal effectively, I think things could go downhill. And, so B, we talk about meeting expectations. If we give an A, that's exceeding expectations. C is just abysmally not exceeding expectations. And if we give a D out on a coaching hire, I think, I don't know what it'd be hard to give out a D on a coaching hire, given that we have no idea what's going to happen. Right. So I give it a B minus. I give it a B minus.
Yeah, I'm gonna go B minus B on the upper end. I think I'm gonna stick around B minus. I'm in the same vein that you have here. I just think the reality of Duke, the Duke hire and the Duke football coach is a tough job. It's a really, really tough job for certain specific people with certain skill sets to really be able to thrive. And David Cutcliffe, a guy with his quarterback connections and his connections throughout coaching, he was able to thrive there for a couple of years. Mike Elko started doing the same as well. Manny Diaz, well, I don't doubt his connections and his experience in the Power Five, right? I just think it just doesn't. I don't know. I think I have a really hard time seeing him exceed expectations consistently. Especially that's why I hate to go. I couldn't go in the upper B, lower A area. I just think he's gonna hover around. Let's make a bowl game this year, right? Let's keep my job and let's keep some boosters happy, stay relevant in the SEC, and every couple years maybe pop, and we'll see you in the college football playoff rankings, at like 24 every once in a while. But I think that's the reality of this hire here with Manny Diaz.
Speaking of recruiting and recruiting losses, Duke loses four-star Tyler Cherry,
Yep,
decommits. Is that because Kevin Johns is likely not being retained or not being the offensive coordinator? I don't know. I
part
don't
of
know,
it.
but that is the first big loss. And of course, let's not blame this all on Manny Diaz, right? Like a lot of people want to. Of course, it's you get a new staff, a kid is going to maybe decommit just to reevaluate his situation and kind of open up his recruitment a little bit. Maybe talk to some other coaches. Not saying he can't go back to Duke, but just some things to monitor. Of course, if they kind of have he can't hold this class together like Mike Elko kind of had it. Be a interesting start, I think, to the Manny Diaz tenure. But to say this couldn't work out is definitely super naive. This could definitely work out. So good luck, Duke. I'm always rooting for you, man. I'm always rooting for you. Let's talk Middle Tennessee. Let's talk Derek Mason. Yep. Rick Stockstill gets let go after what, 18, 17 years, 10 bowl
Forever.
games. I mean, gets let go. Kind of a shock, I think, to a ton of people. I think people close to the program, I think, were kind of expecting it, but like nationally, like including people like myself, I was a little bit shocked by that. But in comes Derek Mason, a guy who's, you know, he's been around. He's been around to a lot of places. So we talk, just run through his resume a little bit, right? He's at Stanford, he's at Vandy, he's at Auburn, he's at Oklahoma State. Didn't work out at Oklahoma State necessarily, but it's hard to also follow up Jim Knowles there. So, but this is a really, I'll call it interesting hire. I did not expect Derek Mason to be the name that was announced when they announced that they were hiring a head coach. So, what are your thoughts initially on this hire?
At first, I was like, okay, that's nice, and I think it's a it's a good hire here. I think it's almost a safe hire. I think I like it. With what he did at Vanderbilt, right? I get it. He got fired there, ended up getting fired there, but to go to multiple bowl appearances in a row, it's super impressive, right? Or multiple bowl appearances total. I'm sorry, in the same coaching span, super impressive there for Vanderbilt. I don't know. You know he's gonna have a good defense, or you assume he's gonna have a pretty good defense. And I also like what he does to this program is not only his connections with staffing, but also recruiting ties in the Tennessee area, and then also in the transfer portal. This helps you absolutely because you are a program like Mid Tennessee. You are not gonna be able to get guys out of high school, right? Elite athletes that everyone's looking after. But in the transfer portal, a lot of guys go unmissed. A lot of guys go to school and is unhappy, and then enter transfer portal, comes back home, maybe closer to Tennessee, and ends up to being a Blue Raider there for you. But yeah, I like it. I do like it. Makes me happy for Mid Tennessee. I think it elevates the coaching room in the CSA, which I think it definitely needs.
Yeah, I agree. Now, there's probably a lot of people, if you're not a Middle Tennessee fan or CUSA fan at all, right? What is the expectation for a program like this, right? And I think kind of the litmus test for some of these programs is like what are their rivals doing, right? So Middle Tennessee, their big rival, 100 Miles of Hate, Western Kentucky Hilltoppers, right? Who a school that's had pretty decent success in the last couple of years. I think that's part of the reason why Rick Stockstill got fired. So you just weren't able to compete with a school like Western Kentucky when you should be able to compete with a school like Western Kentucky, given geographically you're very similar to where Western Kentucky is, again, only 100 miles away. And the resources of the program, to me, feel pretty similar. Now, that could be just me totally being ignorant there, and someone in the comments could point out, hey, oh, Western Kentucky has a lot more resources than MTSU, or oh, Middle Tennessee has more resources than Western Kentucky. Sorry, I said MTSU. I know Middle Tennessee wants to rebrand and drop the state, but sorry about that. But I don't know. I still think this is a good hire, Derek Mason. I still think this is a pretty good hire. So I mean, Rick Stockstill, 18 years, 10 bowl games. I think that's kind of the expectation. Like, make a bowl game. The CUSA is not a very good conference, right? Make a bowl game. Make a bowl game. Year over year, make a bowl game. Make that money for your conference. Every so often, maybe competes. Maybe Liberty has a down year. Compete. Compete at that level. Win some ball games against Western Kentucky, right? Schools, like realistically, schools like New Mexico State should not be A, out recruiting you, B, beating you consistently, right? Schools like Sam Houston State should not be out recruiting you yet. FIU should not be out recruiting you. So, but that was the case in 2023. So 2024, the recruiting rankings in the CUSA, it looks pretty good for Middle Tennessee. Liberty's 1, Western Kentucky's 2, FIU's 3, Louisiana Tech's 4, Sam Houston's 5, Middle Tennessee State 6. I just look, I hope I hope all is well for Derek Mason. I still think he's a pretty good coordinator. I think there's some unnecessary hate that kind of comes in there, but I still think he's pretty solid. I think, like you
For
said, he'll
sure.
he'll he'll bring in a really good coaching staff, and I think he's gonna bring in talent. So if that's what you're asking for this program, I think Derek Mason was a pretty good hire.
He's already started to do that with his staff there, bringing in some guys with his connections from Oklahoma State. He brings in the strength coach there, Jamie Blatnick. You got the secondary coach, Bryce Lewis, who played under Derek Mason at Vanderbilt, also coached under him at Auburn and Oklahoma State. Kendall Simmons is a well-respected guy at the O-line community from Auburn. And then also Brian Stewart, right? Defensive coordinator, assistant head coach, safety coach, whatever you want to call him. Played with Mason in college, has a ton of play calling experience on the defensive side. Coached under Wade Phillips, very respected guy in the NFL there. I think this is awesome. You mentioned the resources and the expectation from Tennessee. I could not agree more. In the short term, let's win some ball games in the CUSA in a pretty poor conference right now. Let's try to ascend and capitalize on that with your resources, with your location and your facilities. MTSU has one of the better combinations of programs in the conference for sure. You're not Liberty, but nobody in there is. But you can compete with Western Kentucky and schools like that for sure, right? And obviously New Mexico State and Jacksonville State, obviously with their run this year first in the CUSA. But to me, Mid Tennessee and Derek Mason can absolutely make bowl games just about 6 out of 10 years, right? Or 7 out of 9 years, whatever. If you get that lucky there, and then also you mentioned long term, every couple years, maybe every 4 or 5 years. Let's see what we got against Liberty, and let's give them a run for their money in the conference championship game. But yeah, I think this is awesome. It's a 5 year deal, $1 million per year. I think it's a really nice fit for them long term with Derek Mason. I don't know if Derek Mason's looking to jump back into Power Five gigs anytime soon, right? So even if you do have some success with him, I think you can keep him at home. I think he still has his home in in the Tennessee area. Wants to raise his family there. Like some guys just like take a job and like they're just happy with it, with expectations, location, et cetera, et cetera. Like they really enjoyed the spot here. It seems to me like the vibe with Derek Mason is he's here to stay and build a program for at least the next half decade.
So we talked about expectations. We talked about, what he's done so far, what he's done his past on his resume. Time to give out a grade. I'm just going to give out a B. I think he'll meet expectations. I think he'll compete with Western Kentucky and what they got going on over there. I think he'll win some ball games in the CUSA. It might not be year one. It might not be year one, but honestly, it probably can be year one because of that schedule that they have. Like, oh my gosh, you can win just about any game that you play, aside from those, Power Five buy-in games that they have. But I think they can absolutely win some ball games. So give me a B. I think he meets expectations. Not necessarily sure. Like exceeding expectations to me at Middle Tennessee State would be consistently winning the CUSA, which I don't think is reasonable given what Liberty is as a program and their resources and their talent and their coaching staff. I just think it's hard to compete with that. But if you can at least show that you're trying to out recruit schools like FIU, which I somehow FIU still out recruits them, which is crazy because they're a military institution. I don't know the logistics of FIU enough to understand why it's such a nice place to go. I guess it's right there in Miami, right? And I
Because it's
guess
right there in Miami.
you got some good talent there, I guess. But Tennessee has its own talent, right? Like you're right in
Yeah,
Tennessee. You're in Middle
for
America. Like
sure.
you can recruit north. You can go up north to Chicago. You can get some kids from Chicago from the Chicago public schools that are pretty solid. Get those guys
St.
in
Louis, not far.
St. Louis is not far from you. The state of Tennessee itself is pretty solid. Alabama, Georgia, like Louisiana, Mississippi, like there's some good talent all around you. So I think you can find and snipe some guys, but it all depends on the staff, which I think Derek Mason can bring in solidly. So B for me.
I'm gonna go here a B minus. I'm so wow, a B plus. I'm a little bit higher than Derek Mason are than you are. I think an A would be a little bit premature to give because you just don't know at a place like Mid Tennessee and a Conference USA. That's it's so variable every year, especially with most of the teams in there. But yeah, I think B plus. I think he exceeds expectations more times than he doesn't. That's why I give it the B plus instead of the B minus. What gives me that gut feeling is because of the success he had at Stanford and at Vanderbilt. To me, if you can have success defensively at Stanford and have success at Vanderbilt relative to what their expectations are, to me, that's a good sign. That means you can coach at a lot of different places. I mean, they beat Tennessee multiple times in a year, multiple times in a row, right? They beat them 5 out of 7 years. Like that's super impressive to beat your rival like that. If
Yeah.
you want someone to beat your rival, like Derek Mason can do that for you. I think
Yes.
this is a nice. I wouldn't call it a splash hire, but I think it's like not only are you going to win the headlines because he's familiar with people in Tennessee, but also like I think he's just a solid coach.
I agree. And when I give a B and you give a B, like those are good grades, by the way. Like that's a good
Mhm.
grade. If you're meeting expectations, that was what you
Keeping your
were.
job, keeping boosters happy, fans happy.
Yeah, exactly. This is a good hire. This is a good hire. I like Derek Mason there. I'm just not willing to go B plus or A minus. I'm not willing to do it. Not willing to do it. But yeah, good luck to Derek Mason and MTSU. Fun fact though, I will say this, like for people that are watching this maybe and aren't so familiar with Middle Tennessee, the school is still called Middle Tennessee State, right? But athletically, they go by just Middle Tennessee. So on their helmets, right, just as MT. So if you were any of you guys confused about that, just I don't know. I don't know if people actually want to hear about that. So if you didn't, then too bad. You could have left this video a while ago. So, but yeah, I like Derek Mason. Let's get into the transfer portal stuff and let's get firing right away. Let's talk about Curtis Rourke. The what do they call him? The Maple Cannon or the gosh, I forget. He's from Canada. He's a stud. He's played at Ohio Bobcats for several years now. Last year, he had a very, very good season. We got hurt at the end of it. Very unfortunate. And this year, he came back. Didn't really look exactly the same. Something was wrong there. Tim Albin is a great coach. They ended up winning their bowl game there, and they went what 7-6 this year, which is still pretty good.
It's
They
a
had a
little bit better than
chance.
that. Let me double check that.
Maybe if they went 7-5, then they finished 8-5. So
They finished
oh no
10 and
no no
3
they
this
was ten
year.
and three because they went 9-3 in the regular season. That's right.
Yeah.
Gosh, how soon we forget Tim Alvin winning a bowl game with Parker Navarro at quarterback, making him look like a stud. But anyways, Curtis Rourke is a really good player. He commits to Indiana. What do we know about Indiana? Well, Tom Allen gets let go, bought out for $20 million, which is a lot for Indiana. And Kurt Signetti brings in Curtis Rourke. Here's the thing: Indiana also offered Jordan McLeod, who is Kurt Signetti's former quarterback at James Madison, who I thought was really effective and a really good player. So I think the fact that Kurt Signetti is taking Curtis Rourke over Jordan McLeod, maybe Jordan McLeod didn't want to follow Kurt Signetti, and that's fine. But that gives me hope. That gives me hope. I think Curtis Rourke is a very, very fine player, and I think he can do well at Indiana and a team that, they're not going to necessarily make it to bowl games, right? But depending on how the rest of this transfer portal cycle goes, now they lost a lot of offensive linemen, but I think Curtis Rourke can maybe move some mountains himself. That would be pretty awesome. So I'm excited to watch him play in the Big Ten, up a level of football. But yeah, to say it'll be easy would be not accurate. It will not be easy for him at all at Indiana, but I'm excited. What about you?
No, I really like this. I've kind of talked myself into liking this more than I think I thought I was gonna. I think a lot of us remember this year's version of Curtis Rourke, who was coming off an injury, and he still played good. He graded out actually pretty darn well, and they won a lot of football games. But that defense was really, really good. And it just didn't
Defense was
feel the same
so
as it
good.
was a year ago, as it was in 2022, where he was just a baller. He was the MAC Offensive Player of the Year, 3,200 yards, 25 touchdowns, only 4 INTs. Right, but he's played a lot of football, right? And I think he will look closer to that 2022 version under a guy like Kirk Signetti and Tino Sinceri, right? Two guys that are pretty darn good at developing quarterbacks and putting them in good spots. Not only that, but you also Indiana brings in Curtis Rourke, but surrounding him with a lot of talent, actually. Donovan McCulley, a guy that was originally going to go in the portal, decided to withdraw from it. He's their star wide receiver. Trenton Howden, same thing. He's coming back. Justice Ellison's the guy they bring back at running back or bring over from Wake Forest, right? At running back that comes in. And then they got three wide receivers in the transfer portal that
Yeah.
I like a lot.
How about
Miles
Miles
Price,
Price?
stud, right? Miles Cross, another Miles there, teammates with Ohio or teammates at Ohio with Curtis Rourke, right? One of his favorite targets. And then Wake Forest wide receiver Keyshawn Williams. Like it's a pretty darn good room offensively. Now they got to figure out a line, and we'll see
Really
what
got to
happens
figure out
there.
offensive line. They
Carter
losing it
Smith
almost
back
like,
is nice, but yeah,
yeah. Should lose
what
Zach Carpenter. I don't know. I mean, it'll be an interesting offensive line. We'll see what Kurt Signetti has up his sleeve and the rest of the stuff there. But look, if Mike Shanahan is he going to be their offensive coordinator? They said he was, right? Mike
I
Shanahan
think
can figure
so.
some stuff out. He doesn't need an amazing offensive line to get stuff going there. So I'm so excited, man. I'm so excited for this. I think he was a big guy that I bought a lot of shares of in college fantasy football this year. Didn't pan out the way that I wanted it to necessarily, but the point stands to where I believe in him a lot and I believe in his talent that he can go into a program like this and potentially succeed. But again, I'll reiterate this as many times as I need to. It is going to be difficult. Indiana is not an easy program to win at, right? Kurt Signetti or not, Tom Allen or not, Michael Penix or not, Curtis Rourke or not. It is a tough place to win. But then no longer do they play in the Big Ten East. However, they bring in, I mean, four schools from the Pac-12 that are consistent perennial winners that you're going to have to end up
That are
drawing.
significantly more talent than Indiana. I do think though this is a good fit for Curtis Rourke, the player, because you surround yourself with a good nucleus of coaching, right? Kirk Signetti, Mike Shanahan, and Tino Sinceri are three very, very well respected guys in quarterback development and offensive minds, right? Like this is a big time move for him. He mentioned part of the reason one wants to go is because of their pro style offense. They pitched him, and because like him wanting to go to the NFL after this year, he'll be draft eligible. Well, he's draft eligible already. He's actually this is his last year of eligibility, but he wants to make that jump, and I think this is a good spot for him to develop and to showcase that against elite competition, and hopefully giving him a surrounding that he can actually compete with.
Mapletron, is that what they call it? No, that's what they call Chase Claypool. Gosh, someone please tell me what Curtis Rourke's nickname is. Please, I need to know it. I need to know it. Let's talk about Chandler Rogers, another quarterback that underrated, perhaps underrated. On three, I believe he's a four-star transfer, which makes a lot of sense. He played very, very well this season. Statistically, he was awesome. And where is he going to? He's transferred from North Texas and he's going to Cal. But a Cal team, a Justin Wilcox team that had some success in some games with Fernando Mendoza. But I mean, if you watch the bowl game, you're probably not as high on Francis or Fernando Mendoza as maybe, some other people are. I still like Mendoza personally. I thought he elevated that roster more so than what's his name, the big time transfer that's supposed to come in and help Cal, Jackson. Shoot, gosh, I need to be better about name remembering. But Chandler Rogers is a very good quarterback in and of himself. But you also have to remember Cal loses their offensive coordinator, Jake Spavital, talking about former Texas A&M offensive coordinator. He goes to Baylor, coach with Dave Aranda there, going back to the state of Texas. So it'll be interesting to see what Cal does at the offensive coordinator spot. But I guess Chandler Rogers believes in himself. I think he believes he can beat out Mendoza. I think Mendoza believes that he could beat out Chandler Rogers. He's not afraid of him. He's won quarterback battles before. So that'll be a really, really, really interesting conversation to have about who's starting in that Cal locker room, uh, at Cal quarterback position, especially because they're moving over to the ACC next year. So we'll see. I think this could end up being a pretty solid move for Chandler Rogers. I like him as a player a lot. What are your thoughts?
I do. The past 2 years, he's been pretty darn good. This year, he took a big time jump, hence the jump into the portal into the Power Five. Yeah, you mentioned Fernando Mendoza. Tough for the kid. I feel for him. He worked really hard. They finished the year off super strong against UCLA, but obviously that bowl game did not look great for him. And I think there's a reason why Chandler Rogers, a very respected, very talented quarterback, coming in the portal, chose Cal because he believes he can come in there, and that staff wants him to come in there and play really, really well for them. He joins a cast of Jeremiah Hunter, who's coming back, I believe, Jaden Ott, another guy, decided to come back in the portal as well.
Yeah, I
It's a
loved
very
his I
interesting.
loved his video. I don't know if you got to see Jay Knott's
Yep.
return video, kind of trolling people. I don't know. I mean, I'm sure Cal fans were having a heart attack when he was like, it was a nice little troll video, but he's coming back. He's excited about it. He's phenomenal talent. Phenomenal.
Really good. And they got a couple backs there as well. So I think this is a really good fit. He graded out super, super well on PFF. And I don't think PFF's the end all be all, but his grades were super, super good. He was almost 90, which if you know anything about PFF grades, that's incredible. He's gotten better every year. I believe was he at Louisiana Monroe in 2022?
Yeah, he was. And he moved to North Texas to go with Eric Morris, who I think is a good offensive coordinator. I think people saw the jump that Cam Ward made, from year one at Washington State to year two. And I think they attributed that to Ben Arbuckle and not Eric Morris. But I think Eric Morris is pretty solid. I mean, Chandler Rogers, 3,300 yards, 29 tutters to 5 interceptions. That's a big improvement from what he had at Louisiana Monroe. So that was an offense I think is very beneficial to quarterbacks. So I believe Cal promoted their offensive lineman or their offensive line coach to offensive coordinator. So we'll see. We'll
Run the
see how that
ball,
works
run the
out.
football.
Yeah, I don't know. We'll see how that works out. I wish the best for Chandler Rogers. I think he's very solid. So I don't know. Do you have any other thoughts on Chandler Rogers in the situation that he's putting himself in?
Yeah, if you're Cal, I think you got to be pretty darn ecstatic. I don't think you see many guys like Chandler Rogers picking you in a church portal because how highly rated he was this year. And on three obviously has a ton of respect for him. I do as well. I know that in the coaching industry they do as well. I think this is a really nice pickup for Cal.
Let's talk about another quarterback from G5 that hasn't made his decision yet. Let's talk Jordan McLeod from James Madison. Kurt Cignetti, obviously, former James Madison coach, goes to Indiana to be their head coach. Jordan McLeod and others end up entering the transfer portal. This is a guy who's very athletic, just wins games. I'm not going to say he's the best arm talent in the world, but he's a good quarterback. And I think he can win games. And he's shown that he can win games. And there are still, I think, a lot of quarterback needy teams out there. So do you have a couple? There's not a whole lot of talk about where his potential landing spots are. I know he's offered by Indiana in high school. He was recruited by Oregon. He's former quarterback of Arizona, where he was recruited. He committed there. Transferred to James Madison. This would be a grad transfer for him. He will not be starting at Arizona next year because that will be Mr. Noah Fafita, the absolute legend himself. but Jordan McLeod's pretty solid. Do you have any ideas of where he might be headed or some thoughts about where he'll go?
I guess some places I would like to see him. This is not insider information, but because I do think he's a pretty darn good quarterback. I loved the jump he made from what he was at from Arizona to JMU, and then even when he was the quarterback back at USF, right? So long ago before 2019. Um, I, I would love to see him at Auburn, maybe UCF. Take a strike at him. South Carolina, staying on the East Coast. Tulane, we talked about before the show. Tulane's a very interesting quarterback team, and so is UTSA with Frank Harris being out of eligibility. Um, I think Auburn, him and Hugh Freeze would be awesome together. USF, same thing with, UCF, same thing with Gus Malzahn. Yeah, I just think you mentioned whoever gets this guy is gonna get a pretty good, very good college quarterback. Can run the ball a little bit, smaller in stature for sure, but that doesn't matter. Especially in some of these systems that almost benefits him because of the quick release and decision makings and sometimes what he can do with his legs as well.
Yeah, I'll say South Carolina, they just, I believe, got a commit from AJ Swan for Vanderbilt. So I don't know
Or
if South
LSU did, right?
Oh yeah, wait. Maybe I am wrong. Was that LSU? Yeah, LSU did. Holy
LSU got AJ
smokes.
Swan, which is very interesting fit, by the
Very,
way,
yeah.
there.
I guess
But
we'll say that one for another
whatever.
day. But and that's what I remember. I had this conversation on air. We were talking about Ken Seals versus AJ Swan, and that there were actual Vanderbilt
Yeah.
fans. There were actual Vanderbilt fans that were telling me that Ken Seals is better than AJ
Yeah.
Swan, and now
That's
he's going to go
crazy.
play quarterback at LSU. So those Vanderbilt fans probably feel pretty stupid right now. But I wrote down, well, Vanderbilt I wrote down as a possible spot for him. Duke I wrote down as a
Yeah.
possible spot as well. Troy, Gunnar Watson running out of eligibility, and then some of the same ones that you had. But I threw Maryland on there, but I know Maryland just got MJ Morris in the transfer portal, and Jordan McLeod's got 1 year left, right? So he's got to make this one count.
Yep.
And I threw Colorado on this list, but again, he's got 1 year, so that's not happening likely. But I thought that would just be a solid fit in terms of where you could go. But there's
So,
some other
well,
spots I
in that
think
same
too.
vein, real quick, San Diego State. Do
San
you
Diego
want to
State's not
follow
crazy.
Sean Lewis?
UCLA is not crazy either. So
There's
I I
a lot of teams that need could use a nice quarterback, especially an experienced quarterback like McLeod.
yeah, and the thing is too, when you have he's proven himself, he's a winner, and at this point he kind of gets the pick. Like some of those other quarterbacks at the start, I don't know. There's gonna be other teams that you didn't hear necessarily early on in these processes that realize that they need a quarterback bad, and they might send a bag Jordan McLeod's way. Some of these Power Five schools that you might not have thought of, right? You might not
That's the
have
interesting
thought
part
of.
about especially the quarterback recruiting because only one can play at a time. Right. We talked about it with the Brock Vandegriffs, the Mac Brosmers, et cetera, those kind of guys where they went to like tier three, tier four, tier five programs and they they're pretty highly rated guys. But while all the big dogs were fighting after Cam Ward, Dylan Gabriel, Will Howard, et cetera, like he just snuck in and just found a good fit for him before a lot of jobs close. The thing is there's going to be some big names that are NIL heavy. You mentioned that are going to need a quarterback, and McLeod and a few others are going to be available. And someone's going to throw a bag towards McLeod, and I think that could be what he's waiting
Yeah,
for, or
I
he could
I
stick
think
and
it benefits him to
stay
wait.
at James Madison. Oh yeah, yeah, for
I think
sure.
it benefits because I don't know. Like maybe he's self-aware enough to maybe know that he likely isn't getting drafted. He may get a shot at the NFL. I don't know. Who knows, right? But maybe maximize your value today, right? And wait for a school that needs a quarterback really badly, and then capitalize. I wouldn't blame him for that at all. So
Well, you also want to see maybe he wants to stay at James Madison. Maybe he's really loved his time here, and
yeah,
Bob Chesney can convince him to stay. I think that's another possibility too. That just because you enter the transfer board doesn't mean you can't come back, right?
absolutely. Let's talk. Let's talk another quarterback. We're talking about a lot of quarterbacks today. So a
Hmm.
guy that did the opposite. We talked about a lot of G5 quarterbacks going to P5. How about a P5 quarterback going to G5? We're talking about Money Mitch Griffiths from Wake Forest transferring to Marshall. Now, CD, as an over Wake Forest 6.5 taker on this show, you and people like myself were pretty confident in Mitch Griffiths going into this year. When I watched him in the spring game,
Yeah,
I liked him a lot. And I like to trust my evaluations sometimes in the spring games. And I know it's not everything, but like he was making good throws. He had really good receivers around him. It felt like, well, obviously, Jimmy or Dave Clawson has done a phenomenal job there as a coach. I thought he could win some games, but he did not play particularly great. And now he moves. Marshall, they're actually playing their bowl game right now against UTSA. Cole Pennington starting that game for them. Cam Fincher had also started some games for them. I think I don't know. Well, how do you feel about this move for Money Mitch Griffiths?
it, it's interesting. I think you mentioned the expectation that people had for filling in for Sam Hartman in an offense with Dave Clawson, and you have three pretty darn good receivers: Jamal Banks, Taylor Moore, and Keyshawn Williams, et cetera, et cetera. Two
Donovan
dynamic running
Green,
backs you like.
Donovan Green did get hurt before the season. He was going to be another receiver for him, but
Yep.
again, Williams was a great receiver in his own right too.
Yeah, so it's tough. I mean, he got benched. Mariucci came in. Michael Kern came in. It was tough there down the stretch. I thought he played well in some games. The Duke game comes to mind. I thought he played pretty well against a darn good defense on the road there in a losing effort.
Although
But it's also,
he did blow it though at the end. He totally blew it at the end,
yeah,
which is I guess fair, but I think you're right though. It was a good defense, and he I thought he played pretty decent in that game.
yeah. So we'll see. It's tough for Mitch Griffiths. I think a good start, a fresh start for both these sides is a really good thing. I think Marshall, he can get developed there. He can play maybe a little lower competition, although the Sun Belt's pretty darn good and has some quality defensive minds in it itself. But yeah, I think this is nice for Mitch Griffiths and Marshall, obviously. I think Marshall, you love when you get a Power Five quarterback with pretty good experience and coaching, and it comes down to your program, and he can really thrive, like you saw JT Daniels do this year, like you've seen other quarterbacks do as well.
Yeah, and maybe in their minds, right? Maybe in Charles Huff's mind, like Cole Pennington isn't ready, right? He's just a freshman, right? And in his time, Cole Pennington, I believe, 400 yards, 6 interceptions before this bowl game happened. I believe he still has not thrown a touchdown, yeah, in this game. So he's still, as we're recording this, he has thrown 6 interceptions to 0 touchdowns. It just feels like he might not be ready, right? And I think they know that Mitch Griffiths is ready to play at that level at least, and they can let Pennington sit at least another year. But it's hard though. It's hard. Now the thing about Pennington being in the G5 conference, his looks in the transfer portal, and given what he's shown on tape, I don't think there's going to be a lot of interest there. I think it's going to benefit him to sit behind Marshall, right? And if you have a guy at a Power Five school, maybe highly rated, and he's sitting behind a guy like Malachi Nelson, all of a sudden entering the transfer portal, Austin Novosad, maybe. I don't know. That's kind of
Ty
just
Thompson,
it's pure speculation. Uh, yeah, Ty Thompson, some highly rated guys. It those guys have the luxury of being able to transfer, and a lot of schools wanting them. I don't know if Pennington necessarily has that luxury. So he might have to sit behind Mitch Griffiths to give himself an opportunity down the road. But I think you're right. A fresh start for Mitch Griffiths. And who knows? Who knows? He might be
he,
back at the P5 levels one day.
he's got 2 more years, so he's got one more year next year to really turn it up, and then one more go at it, his 6th year, and yeah,
Yeah, and Rasheen Ali still has eligibility, right?
yeah.
I thought he was a junior. He was weird because he had the medical stuff that went on.
Let me check that right now. I'm on his page.
Yeah, but I guess I'll just kind of keep rambling. I liked Mitch Griffiths. I thought he had a pretty decent release when I watched him play. He doesn't necessarily, he's not like a gigantic human being from what I recall when I watch him. I don't have his height and weight in front of me, but I don't know. I, when I watched him in the spring game, I thought he was accurate. When I watched him in the Duke game, I thought he was pretty accurate. There just were some times when he just made some boneheaded plays and he just didn't make the throws and he's not very mobile. And Wake Forest doesn't have a great offensive line. They don't have a great run game. It's very quarterback dependent. And Sam Hartman's a guy that could really stretch the ball down the field, and I don't think Mitch Griffis is that guy. So I think the new offense will benefit him a lot.
And Rasheen Ali does have one more year.
That's what I'm
So good for Mitch
saying.
Griffiths.
That's what I'm saying. Come on. So good luck. Good luck to Money Mitch Griffis. I'm rooting for you, man. I still believe in you, man. I still believe in you. Now let's talk another quarterback. Quarterback heavy episode today. A guy who's was one of my favorite players going into the preseason. Didn't necessarily live up to all the hype at the beginning of the year, but down the stretch, played like an absolute madman. That guy's name is Taylon Green of Boise State, freshman Mountain West Player of the Year last year, preseason Mountain West Offensive Player of the Year this year, and I got benched over Mad Max. But when he came back, he was slinging darts, effectively running the ball. He's going to go transfer to Arkansas, which forced KJ Jefferson to officially enter the transfer portal after being rumored to enter the transfer portal several times over the last couple weeks. Officially goes in the transfer portal. Taylor Green is essentially a KJ Jefferson clone, but he is more athletic. Am I correct in saying that?
Yeah, he's a little bit skinnier, but I think he's a little more dynamic and I think his pocket present in terms of mobility, like within the pocket, shedding off tackles. I mean, you saw what KJ Jefferson did to those Alabama players that were trying to tackle him. He just Nick Saban even made a comment off it. It was awesome. But I think Green, yeah, a little bit more dynamic in the open fields, really separating from defenders.
Yeah, he made that backfield at Boise State so dangerous. So dangerous because here's a guy, right, that has two running backs, two
Here's a
essentially all Mountain West running backs, Ashton Janty, George Alani. Then you put a third running back, not saying like he's a running back in a sense where he can't throw, but like he's that electric with the ball. Like you could call him a running back. You could throw him in there in the I formation, and I'd hand him the ball. Like I don't know. For a team like Arkansas that kind of needs their quarterback to elevate the rest of their team, I think the added legs are really beneficial to that offense, especially considering how terrible the offensive line was this past year. Now their offensive line coach is gone. He is headed over to Mississippi State. Maybe we could see a resurgence there in the offensive line like Sam Pittman always dreamed of. But man, it's going to be interesting. No Rocket Sanders for Arkansas. I think AJ Green will probably be the running back there. I don't know if he's in the transfer portal, but I believe he'll be the starting running back. He was at least when Rocket Sanders was out. And I don't know. I love Taylon Green. I just don't love the landing spot. I think it's tough. I think I mean, he saw the success that KJ Jefferson had there, and he probably had conversations with Bobby Petrino, and Bobby Petrino is a very good offensive coordinator, very good offensive mind, gets a lot out of his players, especially the mobile ones. So, hence Lamar Jackson, right? Even Connor Wigman this year before he got hurt, I thought was a very, very good player. Jalen Henderson in the LSU game was very good. I mean, Bobby Petrino was in his bag. So if there was an offensive coordinator that could elevate Taylor Green's I think it could be Bobby Petrino for sure. But it feels like a weird spot to me. I don't know. What do you think? Do you think that there were better spots for Taylor Green? Or do you like this a lot?
I think it's an interesting fit. You mentioned about Petrino. I think we saw him the best about Petrino, right? We've seen some highs and some lows for sure of him. But Lamar Jackson, right? Obviously the famous Heisman Trophy winner there, NFL All-Pro guy, quarterback stud. I don't say think there's a ton of similarities to their games. They are both dual threat and very dynamic in the open field. And I think that's kind of where you can start from the ground up and get him in favorable matchups. You can have light boxes or even heavy boxes because of his dynamic running ability. And yeah, he still a lot to be desired as a passer. I do think KJ Jefferson is a better quarterback right now than Taylor Green. I didn't think if everything clicks for Taylor Green, maybe not this year, but the year after, he can be a very dynamic
Yeah.
quarterback. I mean, the
Oh
tools are
yeah.
all there. There's a reason why he's at Arkansas. But it's interesting though. You mentioned Rocket Sanders transferring out. AJ Green is also in the portal as well. He might
Really?
come back.
Okay.
Who knows? But I also think there's a lot of good running backs in the portal, and I think it's a pretty attractive spot to be with Bob Petrino and Taylor Green. Seeing what Ashton Janty and George Lonnie did this past year for you there. We'll see if they can fix the line for him. I like their tight end group, right? They got some interesting wide receivers coming in. They're trying to fix that defense. They're doing a lot of things in Sam Pittman's, last last pitch desperation season for him, right? Him and Bobby Petrino there. It's super interesting. I don't know. I the fit, I'm just gonna call it interesting, but I think it's gonna be awesome. Like I think watching him, his best and his worst are gonna be two dramatic differences, right? But like when it clicks for him, and there will be plays where it clicks in the SEC, and he just eliminates eliminates angles and just turns corner on guys, and they're like, whoa, where did this come from? You know?
Yeah, I'm excited for him as a player to get a new scene, a new offense coordinator, a new look with some more talent around him. But I would have been more excited if he would have gone to a place like, I don't know, Auburn, who desperately needs a quarterback. I think I would have been more excited if he'd even gone to San Diego State. I think I would have been more excited if he had gone to, say, NC State, Robert and I would have been more excited about those type of things, or those teams if he had gone to them. But I love Taylor Green. You know that I am the conductor of the Taylor Green train. You know that. If you've been following the show long enough, all the way back when this whole thing started in June, one of our first episodes revolved around me hyping up Taylor Green, and he let me down a little bit this season. But at the end of the season, he won the Mountain West. I mean, he played absolutely unbelievable down the stretch. He's a stud. I still will believe that he is a stud. So, any other thoughts on Taylor Green?
Just don't ask him to do too much, especially playing against pretty high level defenses and defensive players. But I think you mentioned the end of the stretch there, Boise State when he was playing really, really well, helping him win a Mountain West championship, right? Like he wasn't asked to do too much. He was complete easy passes to your running backs, screen games, get the ball in space to receivers, and then use your legs. Right. I think Bob Petrino can see that and knows exactly what his quarterbacks can and can't do. And that's why I think the fit's interesting. Now, will he be developed at an elite rate? Who knows? And I hope he is because he's super fun to watch. And if he puts it all together, like we've talked about, would be incredible. But I think in terms of production, like college fantasy football will be a very interesting addition to Taylor Green. Like, I don't know. I don't know. But I like it though. I think it's very interesting for the SEC and for Taylor Green.
Let's talk Ja'Cory Brooks, the guy who got a lot of slack, got a lot of flack for transferring at this time of year. How could you transfer? How could you transfer when your team is in the playoffs and you have a chance to win a national championship? Guys, Ja'Cory Brooks has hardly seen the field. Let's also remember that the transfer portal window is in a terrible location in terms of the college football calendar. The college football calendar is what caused a guy like Ja'Cory Brooks to go in the transfer portal. What caused a guy like Malik Murphy to go in the transfer portal. Let's not blame a guy like Ja'Cory Brooks. All right.
Yeah, he wants to
Let
be at Louisville for spring practice, and he can't do that if he waits until after the playoff
Yes.
games and national championship. Like that's the reality situation. Like he has class to go to. Like as much as we forget about these student athletes, right? He has class to go to in the spring semester if he wants to be able to practice at his new location, and that's going to be Louisville.
Yeah, which by the way, I think is a great fit. It just
Yeah,
begs the
yeah,
question.
yeah.
I think it's a great fit because we've seen there's always an alpha receiver, right? Is it going to be Ja'Cory Brooks or is it going to be Colin Lacey from South Alabama? Two Bama boys transferring into Louisville there in Jeff Brom's system. Is Kevin Coleman still there for Louisville? I don't even know. But what I do know, you get a guy like Tyler Shuck in there, slinging balls. I think Ja'Cory Brooks can benefit a ton from a new situation because it was not too long ago, Ja'Cory Brooks was the hero in the Auburn game when Bryce Young threw that 30 some yard seed down the sideline. Ja'Cory Brooks is a very, very good football player, guys. And I think a lot of people thought that he was going to be the guy breaking out. But some of those younger receivers for Bama, aka Isaiah Bond, Law, even
Burton
Jermaine
figured it out.
Burton finally figured it out, grew some hands, of course, and broke out in the Texas A&M game of all games to break out in. So it just left Ja'Cory Brooks the odd man out, and I think this is just good for both Louisville and Ja'Cory Brooks. I don't think Bama's going to be missing him a ton. I'm just not a. I'm not trying to insult Ja'Cory Brooks when I say that. I think he's just going to be so better off in Louisville. I think it's a better system for him. I think he's going to thrive. And my prediction is that Ja'Cory Brooks is the alpha over Colin Lacey, and I think he is the guy. That Charlie Jones, that Rondell Moore, that David Bell. I I think he might be that guy in this offense next year.
Yeah, this is super interesting. He's 6'2", 195 pounds from Florida, five-star recruit. Like he was that dude, right? As a
Yeah,
freshman, he got playing
yeah,
time at Bama. He caught the game-winning touchdown last year, sophomore year. He was actually their number one receiver, and this year he's just battled injuries. And it's also like, as you mentioned, a Bond and Black, and like the offense also changed with Jalen Monroe versus Bryce Young. I think this is going to be beneficial for both sides. I mean, obviously, I think Bama wants him on the roster for some good depth and for next year when he gets healthy. But for Louisville, get him healthy, get him the playbook. Hopefully, he can get some reps in spring, and he can be a real dude for you this year. I think the 1-2 punch there is super interesting there. Tyler Shuck obviously coming in, Pierce Clarkson there as well at quarterback. I love it. I love it for Jeff Brom. I think Brooks, like this is sometimes like you see a commit and you're in the transfer portal and you're like, you, you're this kind of player and you're going in this kind of scheme. Like, what are you doing? I think this is super heady by Ja'Cory Brooks to know, like, okay, I don't have to go. I can go to Penn State or Ohio State or Georgia or Florida State, whatever it is, and like go compete for national championships. But like, you can do that at Louisville. You can complete for a playoff spot, and then also, this is a really really good spot for him. I love it. I love this for Brooks.
yeah. And people are talking about like the big names in the wide receiver transport, of course, are Juice Wells, Colin Lacey, Matthew Golden, now Evan
London
Stewart,
Humphreys.
London Humphreys, Will Shepard. Like Ja'Cory Brooks might be better than all of them. He might be better than every single one of them. You just haven't seen it. You just haven't seen it. I really like Ja'Cory Brooks a lot. Great fit, great scheme. Jeff Brom is absolutely ecstatic about this. He's going to be the guy for them next year. I'm already telling you guys right now. I'm telling you guys he's going to be the guy for Louisville next year. Forget Colin Lacey, forget Kevin Coleman. This is the guy. This is the guy. Let's talk about another receiver. Let's talk about Colby Young. Guy, I believe, was a JUCO guy before he went to
Yep.
Miami. Now he's in the portal. He's got a couple locations where he could go to as of right now. Penn State is one of those schools. I believe Georgia's in on them as right. Is that right?
Yep. Penn State, Georgia, and actually Wisconsin as well. Got a
Okay.
virtual visit, whatever that means.
So basically, they have no chance.
Well, the thing is he wants to commit pretty soon, right? Like 6'5", 215 guy. He wants to commit soon. Out of so it sounds like Penn State and Georgia are the only places he's been at. London Humphreys, as you know, just committed to Georgia. We talked about that in our London Humphreys video that he's probably going to lean Georgia, and we went over that. So go check that out if you want. If you're interested in that. But for Colby Young, he's from the Northeast area. I think he went to JUCO at Scranton. He's from New York. Right, like he fits at Penn State. There's a need there for you. I think did Fleming commit to Penn State yet, or did he just get
Uh,
crystal balled?
I think he just got crystal
Regardless,
ball.
it's all fluid, anyways. I mean, yeah, yeah. So it's still unknown, really. It sounds like he's expected to go there, but those two pairing would be super nice for Jewellar, and they're trying to revamp this passing group for Kobe on there. But yeah, I guess if he delays his he can't visit right now. The window's closed for them to visit, right? So if he doesn't commit the next couple of days, then he's like, okay, maybe he's actually considering Wisconsin and Phil Longo there, and then he'll visit them obviously after New Year's. But yeah, it sounds like in the next couple of days he'll be at Penn State, if I had to guess.
Yeah, I'll ride that with you. I'll ride that with you. He's a good player. I think he's really talented. I think Miami was happy to bring him in. I think he added some value in that receiver room this year.
Yep.
I do question why he's transferring. Like, is it Shannon Dawson maybe that he didn't love, or he didn't love that he didn't get all the touches? I mean, Xavier Restrepo's gone this year. Like, they're gonna be bringing in a new quarterback. I don't know. I don't like to speculate why Kid could transfer. It could be a number of reasons. It could be family. It could be education. It could be playing time. It could be a coaching dispute. It could be uh toxic locker room situation that he wanted to remove himself from. It could be a ton of things. I have no idea. I don't like to speculate, but it does bring the question, like, why did he transfer, right? It feels like I thought he was in an okay spot. I don't know. Did you have any insight or thoughts on that?
No, I like you mentioned, I don't want to speculate. I think sometimes the new scene is good for both sides. Sometimes he's like, you know what, let me see my NIL market and just test that. And then once you leave, some coaches don't love to have you back. Who knows what it could have been? I don't think this takes away from the player he is because of, first of all, who's actually targeting him: Georgia, Penn State, Wisconsin. And Wisconsin also, don't forget Tyler Van Dyke, his quarterback and teammate at Miami, is heading to Wisconsin. That's another reason he could be, thinking about Wisconsin as well. But yeah, I don't think it takes away from the player itself, as he's super talented, like 6'5". He's huge with the ball in his hands. He's awesome for someone that big, right? In screen games, you get him go long striding. I thought he was a really nice dynamic for this Miami offense. And you mentioned, yeah, like would have loved to see him in year two with Shannon Dawson there, with some maybe elevated quarterback play, and can really maximize his skill set and his pro future, because I think there is one here with Kobe Young. And yeah, but regardless, I think he'll be successful wherever he ends up at. I'm assuming it's going to be Penn State, and he'll be a big time boost for that receiving room.
Let's talk about Jaquavius Marks. This is a guy at Mississippi State that kind of did everything. He's a stud, all-purpose player. Is what we call the guys like this. Of course, his quarterback is in the transfer portal. His coach left. Enter Jeff Lebby at Mississippi State. So, do you have any thoughts on where Jaquavius Marks might go, or do you have any thoughts on some potential nice fits for Jaquavius Marks?
Yeah, the three places I've been hearing, I think all would be really, really good fits for him. Sounds like USC, Louisville, and Washington. You mentioned Washington because of Will Rogers. Also, they went on an official visit together last weekend. Louisville with Jeff Brom and the connections there. And then also USC. I think he sees what Marshawn Lloyd did this year, and being able to catch the ball from Will Howard and Lincoln Riley offense that just fit really well for his game. I think there's the crystal ball is trending towards USC for Jaquavian Marks, but I think it's all fluid. Not a ton's coming out from his camp. But yeah, I think this is a really good pickup for whoever gets him. We talked about him at some points. This was a pretty bad and weird offense, but like he was one of the only bright spots on it. And they kind of leaned into him early in the year and had some success with it, right? Running the ball and catching the ball in the backfield. I think he needs a fresh start. I think that would do wonders for him. And I think, whether it's USC or Louisville or Washington, he's going to thrive in all three of those spots there.
Yeah, I think he offers incredible versatility. He offers incredible versatility. So I think that's why I think USC would be a fantastic fit because I think they have different running backs do different things, right? Whether it's
Mhm.
Austin Jones or Marshawn Lloyd. I think he could do a lot of wonders there. I do like the Louisville fit though. I think that running back room is pretty crowded. I also like the Washington fit that you said as well. So it's not crazy to have any of those things. To have any of those things. Is there a chance that he returns back to Mississippi State, you think? I feel like there's always a chance, right? But
Yeah,
what do you, I think he could look good in the Jeff Lebby offense.
I,
That's
I
my
think that
thought.
helps him for sure. We'll see. Obviously, sometimes those bridges just get burned, and who knows? And maybe Jeff Lebby's just not even considering him come back and is going to waste his time somewhere else. But yeah, I think Mississippi State, the fan base and the coaches, I'm sure, would be thrilled to have him back because of that skill set you mentioned and because of that fit in a Jeff Lebby offense for sure.
Yeah, I mean this is a guy that's had almost 30 touchdowns in his career. He can find the end zone. So I like Jaquavius Marks as a player a ton. We'll see where he gets his looks from. Well, I guess we already know where he's getting his looks from, but we'll see where he ends up. Or if he ends up coming back to Mississippi State. I don't know the intel on that at all. If you're a Mississippi State fan, you have more intel. I love hearing intel, and if you can share us intel by either throwing it in the comments or emailing me at the redshirtsoft more at gmail.com. We would love to give you a shout out on the show. Or if you want to DM us on Twitter at the redshirtsoft, that'd be awesome as well. So, but great player. Can't wait to see where he ends up. I think he'll be awesome. Let's talk about Chris Paul Jr. We haven't talked about any defensive players yet today. Let's talk about Chris Paul Jr., Arkansas's linebacker, guy that came in after Bumper Pool and the likes of Drew Sanders and played really well for Arkansas, I thought. And he's going to Ole Miss, along with a slew of other defensive transfers. So, how do you like this fit? Because I think people look at Arkansas and Ole Miss as a lateral move. I don't know that it necessarily is. I don't know. What are your thoughts on Chris Paul moving to Ole Miss?
I do like it for him. I think to be paired with a guy like Pete Golding is super interesting for Chris Paul, right? I kind of like the way he blitzes and whatnot. And I know Pete Golding loves to blitz his linebackers, blitz guys from all angles, put some stress on his secondary for sure. But yeah, I think this is a good get for Ole Miss. That's really trying to revamp that defense, especially that front seven, because they're kind of gearing up for a potential playoff run next year. Right? They're looking at the schedule, they're seeing the realism and Jackson Dart. You've got the running backs, you've got wide receivers coming back. Like this is a legit football team, and it needs a little bit of pickup on defensive side, and they're kind of going all in on that. And I think that's kind of awesome. I think they're sending a message there. Walter Nolan, maybe some other guys on the D line with Barton and some other SEC guys. But yeah, Chris Paul to Ole Miss is a nice get for him. Arkansas, you mentioned Bumper Pool, Drew Sanders. They've had a run of some really good linebackers recently, and he's the next one.
Yeah, so I hope it works out. I think he's a really good player. Great pickup for Ole Miss, right? Where does this leave Arkansas? I mean, they always seem to have linebackers, right, that just come out of nowhere and play pretty good football. But Chris Paul, I think, is a particularly big loss, right? When you lose experience, sometimes losing production isn't always losing talent per se. But I think Chris Paul in this case, you are losing talent and production and experience. He's one of the top linebackers in the portal class. This is a giant get for Ole Miss. Like you said, they're gearing up for a big run this year. And it needs to
Yeah,
include
and
Chris Paul Jr.
yeah, and um this was kind of the beginning of the Ole Miss defensive portal raid, right? He's kind of started that first domino. We've seen some other guys in that front seven now really consider Ole Miss. This is a big gift for him. And also, you mentioned it with just experience at linebacker. Like, that's so invaluable. Half the job of being a linebacker is just being in the right spot, right? Especially with all the RPOs and all this other stuff that the offense throw at you. It's a really tough position, especially in the SEC, to break in a brand new um, linebacker. It's really tough. This guy has almost 1,000 snaps in his career. Like, this is a good get for Ole Miss. Good get.
Last player we'll talk about today. Give us Samuel Okunlola from Pitt, edge player. He commits to prime times Colorado Buffaloes. 6'4", pretty productive in his own right. This is a big deal. And I know you were really, really excited to talk about Samuel Okunlola. So I'll kind of let you take the reins before I say anything.
Yeah, he doesn't have a ton of experience, but he's a redshirt freshman. Or he was a redshirt freshman this past year. Obviously, you recognize that name if you're a recruiting fan or if you're an ACC fan, right? His brother is right tackle at Miami, right? Okunloa down there, who's a mauler in the run game as well. Or he's actually a 5-star guy. I don't think he's the starter there. There's the other guys starter there. But anyways, he's good time football family genes for them there. In Colorado, you know they need to revamp that front seven and the line of scrimmage on both sides of the ball. You saw them attack the O line already this year with some guys. This is a big time get because a lot of teams wanted him. You don't find many young edge rushers with good production hit the portal all the time, and Colorado snagged him. And this is a big time win for them.
Yeah, it really is. And I guess I don't know. We were always pretty positive about Dion, but there was a point in time where you kind of look back on that transfer portal class from last year and you're like, okay, not a lot of these guys are really starting caliber players. And if they're going to bring in more starting caliber players, there's a lot of guys that are kind of stuck there after using their transfer and they're not going to be able to go anywhere. So like where do these scholarships come from? I mean, there were a lot of players that transferred out of Colorado, which is kind of nice. I don't know if Dion specifically told those kids to leave so that he could keep rebuilding. But this is another one of those pieces where I think we look back on, and we kind of look back on it as kind of a cornerstone, a keystone piece of the Deion Sanders rebuild of Colorado. I think I think Deion Sanders can succeed there, and I think Okunlola is going to be a giant part of it. And what he had like, did he have 5 sacks or 5 tackles for loss just in his redshirt freshman year? I thought he was
I think
pretty productive,
so.
and I think he plays long, he plays hard. It'll be interesting to see him develop at Colorado. I'm excited about that. I'm excited about that. So, any other thoughts on Okunlola?
That was a big time get. You mentioned the recruiting win for Colorado. And maybe that sparks some other guys in the portal to be like, hey, I want to line up next to a guy like this for a couple more years. And it's also you get him for a couple years, which is pretty impressive too. Like you get at least 2 more years, or I guess he can go next year in the portal, but at least 3 more years of eligibility for him there at Colorado. Yeah, for all the reasons you said, this is a massive get for Pitt or for Colorado. It sucks for Pitt that they lost him, a guy like this, a talent like this. But yeah, I'm happy for Samuel and Colorado, both sides there. Big
Yeah,
win.
I mean, this is a huge win because if you also think about the people that Dion beat out for a guy like Ogunlola, you beat out USC, Washington, Mississippi State, who in their own right is had some very good NFL defensive linemen there. Ole Miss, Michigan State, Cal, Florida, Minnesota, right? You beat out some pretty solid teams there. So this is a giant win, a gigantic win for Deion Sanders. So we're gonna help you celebrate that. We wish you luck, Ogunlola. You're gonna be you're gonna be good. I have a feeling.
Yeah, and they're probably gonna look a little bit differently on the front seven and that D line and come fall and you're gonna be like, whoa, what happened to Colorado there? And you're looking, it's gonna be Samuel Okunlola, right? And guys like him that are really revamping that room there. So yeah, big time win for Colorado.
And that is it for episode 46 of the Redshirt Sophomore, covering coaching carousel, cover transfer portal. What is in store for tomorrow? Tomorrow we got bowl season game previews part 2. I'm pumped. So we'll be talking about the bowl games that are going to be going on for the next week, and there is a lot of them. It just keeps getting busier and busier. So we're excited for that. Thank you guys so much for the support. If you haven't already, if you like the content, like the video, right? It's a simple, simple rule that we have here. And I would urge you to consider subscribing, right? If you like this content, it's going to be here all off season. Now we're in the postseason right now. We're not in the off season, but it's going to be here the rest of the postseason. It's going to be here all off season. I can't wait. I can't wait. And we would like you guys to be a part of that journey. Thank you guys so much for the support. If you are subscribed, thank you so much. If you guys are watching this and you're in our college football bowl pool, that's pretty exciting there. We're through our first week of bowl games. As we're recording this right now, UTSA is up 4 on Marshall. Marshall is driving though, but this is awesome. This is awesome. So thank you guys so much. CD, you got anything to say before we get out of here?
No, they mentioned it. Thanks for the support on the channel. Continue to like and subscribe. Share the video, like it, comment. Let me hear your thoughts. We got our own thoughts, but we want to hear your guys too. There's a ton to sift through, a ton to talk about. We'll get to it all. But if you have certain questions about portal guys or coaching hires or bowl games, whatever it is, signing day, shoot us a DM. You mentioned in our Twitter. Shoot us a comment on this video. Whatever you got to do to communicate with us, we're happy to talk with you guys. And thank you for the support.
Absolutely. And we will see you guys in the next one.